There can only be one core, one central truth of our faith. And we see that summed up in both readings tonight. In the gospel where the scribe asked Jesus, which is the greatest commandment, he's posing a question to Jesus, which Jesus answered by quoting from the book of Deuteronomy in the Old Testament. You shall love the Lord your God alone with all your heart, soul, and mind, and all your strength. And the second is like it, he said. From Leviticus, he quoted then, love your neighbor as yourself. Jesus should have answered with one response, we think, which was the first commandment. But he sums up the two and says they are the one commandment. You cannot love God if you don't love your neighbor, and you can't love your neighbor if you don't love God. And that is the central teaching of our faith, love of God and love of neighbor. We all know that we die and rise with Christ in baptism, and he puts our feet on a path to eternal life in heaven. But when you think about it, our death would be our final surrender to God, completely dying and putting our lives into his hands, and in the hope that we will enjoy the resurrection and the new life of heaven forever. We could say that all the successes and failures of our life are kind of like a death and resurrection. When we have a failure, we feel like we died to something. When we have a success, we're filled with joy and happiness because we've succeeded. And isn't life like that, kind of going back and forth between good times and bad times? But in all those events that remind us that what is life really all about? It is about love, love of God and love of neighbor, going to the point of that perfect love, which is resurrection and new life with Christ in heaven. That's the core message of Christianity. We are on a road to eternal life in heaven, and all the acts of love toward God and one another that we do are so important in keeping us on that path. It's good to examine ourselves and see we can't just say we love God if we don't love our neighbor, and we can't love our neighbor if we don't love God. And so we thank the Lord for his teaching and ask him to help us put it into practice evermore in our own lives. Let us stand and offer our petitions.